Hello everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. We're back with another FAQ Friday. That's Frequently Asked Questions Friday. So a lot of marvellous questions this week. We are below going to put a link to each one because we had some comments last week that nobody could find the question that's the title. The thing is, we're doing 2, 3, 4, 5, sometimes as many as 6 answers to questions. In fact, we may have done more. So sometimes the title isn't necessarily the first question that we answer. So if you look below here, you will see the timestamps of each of the answers to the questions. You'll see the questions and then you'll click on them and read the answers. No, listen to the answers. Okie dokie. So if you haven't already, please hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, and you will be notified when we have a video. You can also go to producelikeapro.com, sign up for the email list, get lots and lots of free goodies, and you can try out the Academy. There's lots and lots of rather wonderful people in there who all help each other, so please check that out. Without further ado, let's get stuck into our first question. If you were starting a semi-professional project studio from scratch, how would you allocate the money you have to spend? I'd have to ask a question to answer a question. Are you an instrumentalist? Do you play instruments? Some studios, like professional studios I've worked in, don't have any gear outside of recording gear. Yes, very true. They may have a bass amp stuck away somewhere. They might have a guitar head or stuff. But believe it or not, many professional recording studios are just rooms, incredible live rooms, with incredible control rooms, with consoles and outboard gear. So the reason why I start with this question is if you're looking to record local bands in your area or local artists in your area and you want them to sound good, because the reality is they might come in for their first ever experience in a studio with a guitar or a bass or a drum kit, which is barely or fairly unplayable. So that has happened to me many, many times. Luckily, my last studio before this one had a rental and rehearsal business as well. So I was able to just get any piece of equipment I wanted. When I came to build this studio, I had to think about that. Hence, we'll scan around the walls now. You'll see we have a schnizzle ton of guitars. We have a drum kit, we have pianos, we have basses, we have tons of amps, and we have loads of lovely equipment. This is not an accident. First of all, obviously I'm a guitar player, so I like to be able to reach over and pick up a beautiful guitar off the wall and start playing it. That's the first thing. Secondly, and probably most importantly, they're there for the artist to use. So I would say you're going to have to allocate a little bit of your budget towards buying some instruments. At least one decent bass guitar will be worth it. Now, you may notice my 3 main tracking basses are a Mexican jazz bass, a used PVT-40, and a BB series Yamaha, which cost about $600. So any one of those basses, $600 is the most expensive. I think the jazz bass was a couple of $100 used, and the PV240 was about $250 used. I've seen them go for a little bit more now. They've become popular since we've been talking about them. They are wonderful basses. The point is you don't necessarily have to spend exorbitant amounts of money to be able to get something really good. The most expensive bass that I recommended there was $600. All 3 of those are used on all kinds of albums from, you name it. Everything I've ever done, those basses have been used in some way, shape or form. So as much as I love $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 handmade basses, I usually reach for my jazz bass or my PV or my Yamaha, which are all between $200 to $600. So you could buy yourself a used Precision, used Mexican Precision. Pretty darn good bass. I'm sure there'll be other people suggesting, please do. Next thing I would do would be have 1 or 2 electric guitars. If this, of course, this is all bearing in mind that you're going to record bands, but if you are going to record bands, get yourself a couple of different guitars, something with single coils, something with humbuckers. As you may know if you watch me, I move between Yamaha Rev Staff, my humbuckers, and I have a Fender Strat, which is a recent acquisition. But for a lot of the time, I was using a Yamaha Pacifica, and I still do. And both of those guitars were $200 to $600. Once again, my acoustic guitars are the Scott Baxendale acoustics and the Yamaha LL16. Both of those are between $500 and $1,000. Again, very affordable for world-class recording instruments. If you've got the $250 bass with the $250 used Pacifica, maybe two Pacificas with different pickup configurations, we might be up to about $750, a good acoustic. We're talking about $1,250, $1,300 worth of instruments that will get you guitars and basses. Now, as far as amps, that's probably a contentious thing these days. You could get away with using a lot of high-quality virtual amps and have one or two amps available with cabs, or you can rely on the band bringing in theirs. I personally love amps. If you look over there, you'll see lots of lovely amps. We also have permanently turned on and being used the Deluxe Reverb. We love that, the Tone Master. I'm using it each and every single day. We also have a Pro Junior, which used is about $150, $200. We have the Carl Martin Roadie amp. That's not cheap, but it's wonderful. We have a lot of different options. But we usually move between one or two amps. So if you can set aside some money, do that. So far, we're up to about $1,250 in instruments and amps. I'd probably go for something small and portable. And if you wanted to do ultra metal, that's a different thing altogether. But I would probably start with virtual amps because so much metal is being done on virtual amps, whether it's broadcasted or not. I know guys doing it and they're using a lot more virtual amps these days. A lot. But of course, you have these incredible amps like the Engel and the EVH. Both are wonderful amps that we're using. However, with your budget, maybe that's something you buy as you start making money. Okay, I'm enjoying this. A drum kit, a good drum kit, I would buy maybe a used Ludwig, a 60s used Ludwig for the basic kick and the shells. And then snare, obviously I'm very partial to a Ludwig Supraphonic, a Black Beauty, you use one of those, but Tamar make affordable drums. So do Yamaha. I think it's more about a kit. You could buy a used Tamar, a used Yamaha, a vintage Ludwig. You could buy all of those kits. All you really need to do is make sure the hardware still works and things aren't drooping all over the place. And that you keep the skins relatively fresh, especially if you're doing modern music, fresh and well tuned. Drums are about how you hit them and how they're tuned more than anything else. I've recorded inexpensive drum kits with a great drummer tuned well, and you'd think it was expensive. I've recorded expensive drum kits tuned really badly with a terrible drummer, like myself, and it sounded horrible. So it's the drummer and the tuning on the drums and the performance that are really the biggest part of this. So again, I would look to buy yourself a used drum kit, the best thing you could afford, with a nice set of cymbals. I'm partial to Zildjians and Paiste cymbals. It's just where I come from. I think John Bonham, I think classic stuff, so I like Zildjians, especially the darker ones, and I love a Paiste ride that Bonham played. But again, a lot of people are turning to the really inexpensive used market, like the 101 Paistes you can get for pennies on the dollar, and they're not very expensive sounding, but they have a really unique, trashy sound. Lots of people love them. You can experiment, start collecting different cymbals from high quality to low quality, and see what works in that response. Again, I think you can do an inexpensive drum kit, probably including a snare used on eBay or Craigslist or something for about $500. So, depending on the amp situation, whether you go with simulators or not, you're probably looking at about $2,000 worth of basic gear for guitar, bass, and drums. Next thing you should do is just get yourself a USB keyboard. You're going to need something to trigger the sounds in your DAW. That gives you, now you've got access to drum programming if you need it on the keyboards. Maybe it has a pad. There's great things on the market for about $100 or so. They can be small, they can be large, whatever makes sense, but they start at about $100 or less, and there you now can trigger all those sounds. Many, many great DAWs, Logic springs to mind, come with a schnizzle ton of stock sounds. God bless it. So, and Pro Tools itself comes with stock sounds. Almost every DAW comes with stock sounds, which sound great. And if they're not amazing as a stock sound, you can distort them, chorus them, overdrive them, do whatever you like to it, delay them, reverb them, and get creative with them. So that $100 USB keyboard is going to be a wonderful investment. Maybe it's top of your list if you're not doing that many acoustic kind of stuff. But I would go with the instruments when it comes to a semi-pro studio. Basically, you're going to be in an environment where you're going to encounter a lot of musicians coming in that don't have great instruments or are lacking one or two instruments, and you can fill in the gaps. As far as what you need for a DAW, that is where all bets are off. It would be lovely to hear what people use down below. Explain what DAWs you can use and why. I grew up using Pro Tools. Early version of Pro Tools. I was in on about 3.8 and I liked it because I could edit audio the same way keyboard players could edit and move around MIDI. So I use it and I love it and I know how to use it. However, there's many, how many times can I say many people that love other DAWs. And I'm not here to have a fight about it because I know that Cubase is a great DAW because I have great friends that make great music on Cubase. I know Ableton's fantastic, Reaper's fantastic, Logic's fantastic, Bitwig is a new one, is coming up and killing people. There's so many great ones. I don't want to miss any out. Digital Performer, FL Studio, FL Studio have that inexpensive, app for your phone that's like the biggest selling app on there. I would say, there's like so many great ways to make music. I mean, if I missed out DAW, which I'm sure I missed out loads, reason. It's not that I don't think it's important, it's just that it is important. If you know your DAW well, stick with it. It's better to know your DAW really well than it is to just keep flirting around and trying out lots of different ones. Now, as far as interfaces, I love Audient as a company. I've been behind a lot of the stuff they do because they have inexpensive interfaces that have great sounding mic pre's. And you can start off with a 2 input if you're not doing live drums. 2 would easily be enough, maybe even 1, but I'd start off with a 2 input. And you can expand to a 4, to an 8, to a 16 kind of system, depending on whether you're going to record a lot of musicians playing at the same time. Having at least 8 means you'll be able to get enough inputs on a drum kit to get a really good drum performance. And maybe track the live bass, a scratch vocal, and a live acoustic guitar or something at the same time. Either way, 8, I think, is like the beginning of recording a band, depending on how many mics you want to put on a kit. Next up, your computer of choice is really up to you. Whether you want to be on PC or Mac, Apple, whatever, it's really up to you. There's no rules. Both of them do the same job. A lot of professionals where I come from, where I live over here in Los Angeles, use Apples. But a couple of guys I work with closely, both on PCs. So the jury's not out, it's just whatever works for you. If you like Apple and want to stay with Apple, stay with Apple. If you know PCs inside and out, if you want to customize it and upgrade it continuously and know what you're doing, that's amazing. I know people that love PCs because they're able to keep them up to date and the latest and greatest. Or, more importantly, because you can get a lot of bang for your buck in the PC world. Let's be honest, $500 buys you a really nice PC and barely gets you in the market for anything Apple beyond maybe iPads. So I get it. I understand the barriers to entry. If you're a PC person, stay with the PC. If you're an Apple person, stay with the Apple. Whatever makes sense to you. All right, next up, speakers. Do you want to spend a lot of money on speakers? Kali, we use them every day. The LP6s, link below, I'm sure. $300 for the pair with a power amp built in. All ready to go. Plug in a pair of speakers at the back of your little 2-amp interface and off you go. However, big deal. Headphones, the headphone market is growing insanely. It's been 40% year over year of growth. And I heard some retailers doubled their sales last year. Headphones are here to stay and they are the way that many of us are working. That's why all of these incredible softwares are coming out. That's the reason why Waves has been working on that, those virtual softwares to make you feel like you're in a room. That's why other companies have been doing it. Left Embody we just met with, same thing, 3D Reality. All of these companies are doing this. It's the future in not only gaming, it's the future in mixing audio and everything else. Soon we'll be hearing 5.1 and Atmos sounding systems in a pair of headphones. Trust me, you will be. So all of those people that think it's a crazy idea to do this are in the past. This is the future. This is where it's going. So if you can't afford a pair of speakers and $300 seems a lot, and probably more importantly, you don't have an environment to be able to play speakers loud enough to work on, then headphones are the way to go. There's lots of great companies. We like Blue in the mid-price, we like Focal in the high end, and we like Audio-Technica in the entry level. I don't have any affiliates with them as far as financially. I just think that becomes clear. Audio-Technica make great entry headphones. Blue in the mid-range are fantastic. Biodynamic, of course. I have the DT1990s are amazing. And right at the high end are the Focal. So there's lots of choice there. And loads of other headphone manufacturers. Please let us know what you love. So headphones, I would probably try to start around about $200 to $300 if you can for mixing. If you need to buy a lot of headphones because you're tracking a lot of live musicians, then I would probably go with Audio-Technica. You can get those Sonys, those 7506s, the sort of industry standard, pretty darn cheaply if you're in the US. And then if you're in Europe, you can still buy Biodynamic DT100s. Big fan. I have 4 pairs or 3 pairs in there. Really great headphones. So, what are we left with? Just a whole bunch of cables. What I would do is take a look at our Sweetwater link that we put together last time where I went and bought some studio stuff. Maybe add the instruments in there, and Bob is your uncle. I mean, I would say for cost effectiveness, don't be afraid to buy used stuff, especially the instruments. You know, play them, make sure the neck isn't bowed, look down the neck, all that kind of good stuff. But it's really rather wonderful. So I think total, we're probably looking at, if you want a proper project record live bands, you're probably looking at 5K and below if you go and blend used instruments, used equipment with new stuff. If you want all new all the way along the way, you're probably looking at 5 to 8. Depending on your area, you're going to pay between half and 2/3 of a retail price. So if you go online and find yourself an $8,000 solution, expect to pay about 4 to 5, in the used market. And it's probably going to be a combination of used and new. Be careful, of course, when you're buying used. If you can, try to buy through eBay because you can have recourse. If the thing you ordered doesn't turn up, you've got a recourse. That's a little bit more difficult when it comes to the world of Craigslist. But, if you're a grown-up and you can handle yourself, then obviously going and buying stuff on Craigslist works. We've done it all the time. We bought the drum kit in there off Craigslist, and we also bought the bass amp in there off Craigslist. So it can be done. So hopefully that answered the question. I'll put a whole bunch of suggestions down there. There will be a link where you can buy all these things new if you like any of those things that I'm suggesting. So please check that out down below. If you've been watching the last few FAQ Fridays, Frequently Asked Question Fridays, you'll notice we've been talking about Storyblocks. Storyblocks have very kindly sponsored this video, and they sponsored a couple more. And I'd like to tell you a little bit more of why we're working with them. Storyblocks is a great service for when you're in need of a quick soundbite for any project. We use it ourselves, for instance. Get unlimited downloads from studio quality audio clips, loops, music tracks, and sound effects with a membership to Storyblocks Audio. All the content is royalty-free, so you can use it for commercial and personal projects such as, of course, like us, YouTube videos. New clips are added regularly, so there's always something fresh to download. So obviously, as I've mentioned before, we use this ourselves. We've used it in quite a few videos, especially when you want something a little fresh, because we use the same music for the intro. I don't want it playing through every video. We have made that mistake a couple of times and had, probably rightly so, been criticized for using a loop, haven't we, Eric, of the same music going over and over again. And people are like, so I get it. So discovering this company was very, very great for us. It's really been very helpful because now we can have bed music that is different and we can change it up and do different stuff. And that way we don't have to worry about somebody else claiming that we're using their music. So we use it, and I highly recommend it. So click on the link below in the description to learn more about Storyblocks Audio. So many of you follow us on Instagram and Facebook and all those kind of good things. There'll be an Instagram link down there to click if you're not already following us there. And if you do follow us there, you'll notice that I was playing this guitar a couple of days ago. This is the Iconic Guitars Elegante. If you remember our NAMM video from 2019, well, it's still 2019, but if you remember our NAMM video, we went down and checked out this company. We just were walking around. The great thing about Summer NAMM is there is a lot of guitar manufacturers there and pedals and amps and everything. And I just absolutely love this guitar. I love it, of course, because it is reminiscent of a Jaguar or a Jazzmaster. Is it Jaguar or Jaguar? I say Jaguar. I think it's Jaguar. It's reminiscent, but frankly, it's not exactly the same. It's got that same kind of offset body. It's a slab. Look at that finish. Oh, so gorgeous. You're going to hear this, of course, just through my little tiny mic, but hey, it is what it is. Absolutely gorgeous. Both pickups together. Absolutely love it. Just an absolutely gorgeous guitar. See the bridge. And this whammy bar, it's totally the wrong word, but this vibrato arm, this is just... What I love about this guitar is it's so stable. Look at this. It's got a bit of weight to it. It's very, very solid, but look how balanced it is. So you can just sit here like this. Guitar players, you know what I'm talking about. How that balance doesn't work. So you're not feeling like you're pushing it up with your arm the whole time or pulling it down, trying to get it to be balanced. It's just extremely well designed. So thank you, Iconic Guitars, for just really doing a great job. It's very, very smart to think this way. Absolutely love this guitar. Gorgeous. Thank you, Iconic Guitars. Really gorgeous. Check them out. I'm sure there will be a link flying around down the bottom there. Just go and check it out. Was really, really impressed. I highly recommend, if you don't go to Nashville for Summer NAMM, where we met these guys. If you are a guitar player or you love guitars, you love recording guitar music, it's just a great place to go. It's a wonderful combination of instruments and people that do recording. So, you know, Larry Crane is there from Tape Op. He's just standing at the booth. You can go and say hi to Larry Crane and talk to him about recording, talk to him about Tape Op. I've never been to a place where there's so much accessibility as Summer NAMM to some of the best players and the best companies in everything. You know, everybody's there. It's really a fantastic place. So Summer NAMM in Nashville. Highly recommend it if you're in that area. Or, to be honest, be like me, fly in there. It's wonderful. What are some things you do to make sure your ears are always in good shape? We have a lot of seasonal allergies here in Southeast Virginia, so keeping my ears working right means a lot of allergy medicine. Any tricks to keep the ear health in good order? Well, there's sort of two ways I can answer this. I'll answer your second half first, talking about allergy medicines and all that kind of stuff. I think that obviously keeping your nasal passageways and all of this stuff, you know, as open as possible is huge. You know, if your nose is blocked and your ears are blocked, everything is going to sound like this. This is probably not a good idea. So I completely understand that. I would say if you are in a situation where you're forced to work and you feel stuffed up, just use common sense. If you find yourself reaching over to your console or plug-in and boosting high end by 5 or 6 dB more than you normally would, don't do it. Just be like, okay, my ears are probably shot. So it is important, obviously, to keep everything clear. Afrin is a godsend. It's something you can buy. I think you can buy it over the counter, and I have used it for years. Now, with all nasal sprays, please remember, whichever one you buy, whichever one your doctor recommends, please remember that you should only, and this is really important, only use it when you are ill. Why do I say that? Well, you can get dependent on it and you can start this sort of chicken and the egg situation. So you clear your nose with one of these nasal sprays that maybe you've been prescribed by your doctor. Only use it for the amount of time prescribed. If your nose starts to clear and you feel a little sniffly, don't go back to it. Don't start, because what will happen is you will actually increase this horrible cycle. And it happens a lot, and you can read it on the box, you can read it online, but what will happen is if you use nasal sprays all the time to clear your nose, you'll start depending on them as the only way to clear your nose. And I know people that literally are like spraying the nose the whole time, and then they're clearing it, and then it goes running, and then they spray again, clearing it goes running. It becomes addictive. So be very, very careful about nasal sprays. Decongestants, of course, quite often contain pseudomethadone, which is not a very nice drug to put into your system. For me, it speeds my heart rate up like crazy. So you've got to be very smart and very careful with all of these things. Saline solution is something I've heard people use, but I've recently been reading that isn't safe either. Basically, just go to the doctor when you have a cold that you can't shake and make sure you get proper medication. Don't abuse the medication. And I suppose, probably most importantly, wash your hands all the time. And try not to put your hands to your face so you catch something. Don't put your hands in your mouth. These all seem like obvious things, but good hygiene will stop you catching colds and flus and all kinds of stuff. That's the first thing any doctor will tell you. And secondly, probably to answer the first line of your question, which is what are some things you would do to make sure your ears are always in good shape? Well, to be honest, don't monitor too loud. Monitor a quieter, lower level. Don't blow out your ears, because that's the number one thing that we face when we're mixing or tracking, but essentially mixing, because we're listening to compressed and limited high volume sounds, is if you're listening at a high level for any extended periods of time, your ears will turn themselves down, particularly where your ears are most sensitive in the 3 to 5K mid-range, high mids. So what happens? You come in the next day, maybe a day and a half later, your ears have settled back and you play your mix and it's like, it's the brightest, most aggressive high mids you've ever heard in your life, because you were tracking or mixing really, really loud. So one of the number one things to think about when protecting your ears is don't track or mix for long periods of time at really high levels. Make sure, if you want to listen to for a second, maybe 10 seconds just to see how it feels pumping out through those speakers, great. But if you're going to do that for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes and extended periods of time, you will do damage to your ears, and eventually you'll do irreparable damage to your ears. So be very, very careful. We listen loud a lot, but for very short periods of time. When we're doing like little rides and bits and pieces, we'll listen quiet, we're just like figuring out stuff, and then we'll play back and blast it for like 30 seconds or 20 seconds and be like, okay, cool. Bring it back down, dim it, maybe half the volume, or just turn it down, and then work on some detail stuff, and then boom, power it back. Make sure it's exciting at all levels. Of course, do all of those things, but not extended periods of time. So thank you ever so much. Hope you enjoyed that. Please give us some experience on the kind of equipment you would buy on a project studio. Would love to see what you would do. Give us some examples of instruments in particular, the used instruments, guitars and basses and drums and stuff that you think are incredibly good value for money, maybe new. Leave those below. Would love to know. All opinions on recording equipment is always welcome as well. I love reading what you all use, what DAWs, what interfaces, all of that kind of good stuff. So leave it all below. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and go to producelikeapro.com and sign up for the email list. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing.